I just beat Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn, and oh my gosh, it was incredible. I have not played a video game that has captured me quite like that since probably 2011, during the height of Minecraft coming to console, during the height of Black Ops Zombies, during the height of Skyrim. I haven't played a game like A Realm Reborn that's actually grabbed a hold of me and made me want to play every single day until now. I am going to be fanboying over everything Final Fantasy in this video. Also, there's going to be tons of spoilers, so if you haven't played it and perhaps want to play it and don't want to be spoiled, I'm just giving you fair warning now. Also in advance, I am not an expert. This is not a comprehensive review of all the ins and outs. This is simply just coming off the heels of playing an amazing game and want to just talk about it. I loved it. The game's fantastic. So anyway, welcome back, nerds, to the channel. Hope you're having a great day. Let's get into it. There is so much to unpack when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn. I'm only going to be speaking to the base game. I haven't even gotten to the expansions yet, and I have had just an amazing time playing this game. I have not been captivated like this since Skyrim, which, for those of you asking, when's your next Skyrim video? I don't know. I've been so busy playing Final Fantasy XIV. I have just been enjoying myself and soaking it up. And so this is me breaking my YouTube hiatus to come back and tell you how amazing this game is. But I do want to jump into what we're going to be talking about today, being Final Fantasy XIV. And I want to start with character creation. Character creation in this game is fantastic. With any good RPG, you need to have a really robust set of options for your character creation engine. And I feel like Final Fantasy XIV delivers. There are so many different races and different variant of races that you can choose from. It's amazing. And I spent easily an hour and a half just playing with all the different combinations until I finally settled on what I wanted to play as my main character. I made alt characters just for fun. I even made Kamari Ronso from Final Fantasy X just for fun, just to see if I could do it. And it did not disappoint. There are so many different little nuanced things you can do for your character, such as height and skin color, hair. The hair options are fantastic for all the different races as well. So there's just so much you can do to help feel immersed. I know some people like to play MMOs with like silly characters or even RPGs with funny looking characters. For me, I want to feel immersed, and there are so many options to help cater just about anybody when you want to play this RPG. So I felt really immersed in my creation options and could not speak more highly of Final Fantasy XIV's creation engine. When it comes to Final Fantasy XIV's aesthetics, they are top tier. It seriously makes the game feel so special, having so many different visual elements that really just make the game feel magical. When it comes to aesthetics, this game nails it. Especially for me, I started my playthrough in New Gridania, and all those early quests when it comes to the main story, as well as your different job classes, your different missions, they all started in that forest biome for my playthrough, and it just made that forest biome feel so cozy and special, to the point that when I traveled to other parts of the game, like Ul'dah, and kind of walking down those streets for the very first time, hearing the music, it felt magical. I feel like every area in the game just offers something special, whether it's the NPC designs or the armors, which, speaking of armors, I will say that despite the early armor in the game, it's pretty terrible, aesthetically speaking, of course. But as you get further along, I got a really sick set of armor. It's actually Cloud Strife's armor from Final Fantasy VII, and I was basically maining that for a good portion of A Realm Reborn. I made that my glamour, which once you learn about glamours, this game just becomes a whole other level of enjoyment. I mean, aside from missions and main story quests, glamours alone is its whole other thing. I mean, there's like fashion shows, and anyway, that's a whole other thing. But all that to say, the aesthetics in this game are absolutely amazing. to the point where sometimes I would spend a considerable amount of time just admiring other players' armors and asking them to show me what do they have. And the community was so nice and just showcasing and being supportive and telling me where I can get it and how I can get it without spoilers. And I will say the aesthetics of this game were amazing. Different biomes, different cities, everything felt special and magical. And I just cannot speak more highly of the aesthetic design of Final Fantasy XIV. And a big part of aesthetics is the music. I mean, seriously, when I heard the prelude of Final Fantasy XIV, that opening, song they typically play when you see the crystal, that song is just, it made me melt. And I love the rendition of the traditional Final Fantasy, intro song. I love 14's version of that. It just feels so magical. And hearing that and then launching into the game for the very first time, it just felt like, oh my gosh, I know this game is about to be the best gaming trip I've ever had. And I will say that it did not disappoint. The music with bosses and environments and different dungeons, different events in the game, music felt sacred in a really significant way. And if you really haven't ever just listened to 14's soundtrack, it's on Spotify, it is so worth it. If you have played it, go back and just listen to the actual sound design of some of those pieces. I mean, they are so good. And if you haven't played Final Fantasy XIV, you need to listen to it. This is probably, in my opinion, one of the best Final Fantasy soundtracks ever created. And I'm a huge fan of Final Fantasy X's soundtrack, but 14 it brought it to a different level. And when you couple that with the aesthetics of different environments, or like I said, dungeons or bosses, it just makes everything feel that much more epic. I cannot rave enough about the music in this game. When it comes to bosses in Final Fantasy XIV, there are some really special moments for me that just left me with my jaw on the floor. For me, I really enjoyed the boss at the end of Hawk Manor. The aesthetics of that particular dungeon, kind of being like a haunted manor, ghouls and ghosts. It's a really cool vibe, but the build up to the end with that particular boss was super, super cool. I loved her moveset. I loved the creepy vibes. It just was a very unexpected boss aesthetic. In fact, the whole dungeon was a really fresh take on just like a dungeon in general. But I loved the final boss in that particular dungeon. It was really, really fun. For me though, I will say in A Realm Reborn, the most excited moment I had when it came to bosses was Ifrit. And for me, I have been an Ifrit fan since Final Fantasy X. Seeing Ifrit as an Aeon and then seeing Ifrit in 14 as an icon just was incredible. I love how the storyline evolves and explaining the relationship between Eorzea and icons and how that sort of evolves. But seeing Ifrit was just magical. Not to say that the other icons were not special, but for me, always having a huge love for Ifrit, seeing him in 14 was just absolutely amazing. The boss fight was super fun. Love the moveset, love the AoEs, and the fire, obviously. And obviously, oh man, I forgot this part too. The blue fire in Ifrit's mouth was just such a cool moment. Like, just the design was super fun. I will say, though, outside of Ifrit, Ultima Weapon was another really amazing moment. I love the design of Ultima Weapon in 14, and I love the music that accompanies the fights and just the significant power threat you see and the destruction capability of Ultima Weapon. It just was amazing. But for me, ultimately the best boss in A Realm Reborn for me was Ifrit. Just seeing that scene, oh man, it was amazing. When it comes to Final Fantasy XIV's classes, it is such a great experience being able to choose exactly how you want to play from the very start of the game. You are immediately given so many different options of classes and ways that you want to engage in combat from the very start. For me, it was very familiar to my old school gaming days with Final Fantasy I and how you choose the combination of your 4 heroes of light and how you want to utilize their skills and classes and navigate the game. In many ways, I had that same nostalgic experience in Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn. I really only honed in on a few classes. I still have many more classes to kind of explore in my playthrough, but the ones that I really enjoyed were the Lancer, which became Dragoon. I really enjoyed playing through Warrior and Bard, and ultimately Samurai, but that one I don't really necessarily count because they kind of give it to you at such a high level. For me, grinding my way through Dragoon was such a cool experience. Out of all the classes that I played, the storyline for the Lancer/Dragoon was actually just a really cool experience. I'm a huge fan of the Dark Dragoon from Final Fantasy IV. So being able to play a storyline that kind of had some really special moments that seemed like it was nodding to that game, or at least attribute to the game, was really cool to watch. I love seeing how we get to explore the history of the Dragoons in Eorzea and meeting the lineage and how they obtain their powers and how the dragons kind of play into all of that. And then finally, when you get your armor set, it just was so rewarding to have the full Dragoon set. I actually used that armor set without any glamour, and actually I'll still use that armor set without glamour just because of how cool the storyline was and how amazing you felt when you finally got to put that armor on. So for me, I love the Dragoon class. It has a very special place in my heart. Samurai is what I'm currently maining through the main story quests. I love the Samurai aesthetic as well. The storyline is okay, but for me, the actual armor that you get and the move sets of the Samurai are just so freaking cool. I thought it was a really good class to obtain kind of late game in A Realm Reborn, so really enjoyed that. Another thing I really love about Final Fantasy XIV is the dungeons, and granted, maybe this is because I don't have a lot of exposure to MMOs, but when I first got to experience the very first dungeon in the game, Sastasha, level 15, it was such an amazing experience. I was doing MSQ for a while, and then my very first, dungeon experience really was, in many ways, exciting and also very stressful. I didn't know dungeon etiquette. I didn't really know much about DPS, tank, healer sort of dynamics. I just have exposure to old school Final Fantasy games and some of those dynamics, but had no idea about traditional MMO relationships in those settings. So for me, I went into Sastasha. I love the opening sequence for that, by the way, and seeing that for the first time was like, oh my gosh, what am I getting into? This looks very intimidating and also intriguing. But kind of going into Sastasha, I loved immediately just the aesthetic of that particular dungeon, the bosses, or excuse me, the enemies, and then ultimately the boss in that environment. And actually, it's really funny because I didn't know about pooling as a tank, right? So I was trying to stop literally for every single enemy and defeat them, and didn't really know about staying with the party. There's so many things I'm learning on the fly, and looking back, I laugh at now. But I just truly was so ignorant of how to play an MMO. So I'm so thankful for how gracious all those people that I got partied with in my earlier days of A Realm Reborn and how patient they were with me. I also love just how unique every dungeon is. Just to call out a few that I really enjoyed. I loved the 1,000 Maws of Totorak. I really loved Hawk Manor, Brayflock's Longstop. Another one that I really enjoyed actually early on was the Copperbell Mines. All of them just had unique presence, and I sometimes would just get in queues and just wait and play them over and over just for the XP. which actually, speaking of queues, I actually didn't have any bad experience with long wait times. I think the longest I really had to wait was maybe 10 minutes, but typically it was 5 minutes or less. And actually, in the event that it was, a little bit longer, many times I would just walk up to a random person and say, "Hey, do you want to join me on a dungeon?" And 9 times out of 10, they would say yes, which just speaks to the quality of the community within Final Fantasy, which is like a whole other aspect. Is just the community engagement is so amazing. But when it comes to dungeons, I just, the experience of a non-MMO player coming into it, once you get your feet under you, the experience is really, really fun. I love the dynamics now when you have different classes and how they support each other and how they navigate and their strengths and weaknesses, and really putting so much faith in the healer to really cover you, and knowing what support you're going to have and what spells are going to be able to assist you as DPS or as tank, and making sure you have that tank stance on, for instance. But I think the dungeons in Final Fantasy XIV and Realm Reborn were just really, really fun. Each one was unique, and I never felt bored or burdened by having to actually do them. The community element in Final Fantasy XIV was a true treat to me. It really is the icing on top, in my opinion, to what makes this game so great. For me, I had every intention to play this game as solo as possible. And I read before I bought the game that you pretty much could play this game like a traditional Final Fantasy game, with the exception of the dungeons. You could play as a solo character. So I had every intention of playing this game as a solo character. Didn't really have interest or desire to, be part of a, gaming community online. But I will say that changed very quickly. The interactions I had with people in this game were phenomenal. Some of the nicest, kindest, most supportive, encouraging people I've ever met in my entire gaming life occurred within Final Fantasy XIV. And I will say, in many ways, it redeemed the often toxic communities that exist in the gaming world because of how kind and supportive the people are in this game. Now, granted, this is my experience, and I'm also playing on Oceania, so I don't know if that makes any difference, but for me, I'm an American, I'm in an American time zone, but at the time of actually buying this game, those servers were congested, and actually I was given an XP boost to actually play and start my character in Oceania. So that's what I did, and I'm so glad that I did, because the people I met there were so incredible. When I first got my free company invitation, it was really when the game became a completely more wholesome experience. And for me, that is when I knew that I needed to go ahead and sign up for a year membership, because this game is just so incredible with the community that exists. Again, this is my experience, but the people that I met have actually become really good friends. I love being able to get on Discord and be able to talk to my free company friends. They have resources and so much support if I ever need anything. If I'm in a queue and I need a third or a fourth person to join, I can ping them and they'll join me. It really made this game just next level for me. I had no expectation for the community aspect to be good. Like I said, I went in with this thinking that I'd be a solo player. That very quickly changed, and now I love logging in. I get to be in Limsa, and when I see all my friends with their orange name tags because I'm their friends, it is so amazing to see my friends running around Limsa and just interacting and jumping and showcasing their armor, or doing funny emotes. It just became a completely different experience. And honestly, once I became part of a free company, the game really just became God tier, in my opinion. This MMO for me is a God tier gaming experience. And there's so much more that I could talk about, like housing and different mounts and minions. But for me, A Realm Reborn just was a complete chef kiss. And the way that it ended with just how you save Thancred and defeat Ultima Weapon, and even that scene when you're running out of the tunnel, when you're in the Magitech armor and you're running through the tunnel with Thancred in the back, it just was such a cool moment. It was a perfect way to end A Realm Reborn. I love the ending. I love the last boss fight with the evil Thancred. That was actually a challenging boss fight. But all I can say about this game is that it is a phenomenal experience. I know I'm fanboying and I've been rambling on about all the ways this game is great. I know there's probably ways this game could be better, and for all the professionals out there or those who have way more experience with MMOs, you could probably tell me in the comments of ways the game could be better. But for me, this game was a top tier experience game. I loved it from start to finish. I loved all the side quests. I loved all the job classes, quests. I loved all the NPCs and characters and armor. I loved the music, the aesthetics, everything about this game, including the community, in my opinion, is one of the best gaming experiences I have ever had. So thank you so much for listening to me ramble and watching this video. As always, make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your grandma, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.